Good morning. It's great to have you join me up here in the choir loft at Epiphany. We're here this morning to learn a little bit about the organ. Organs have been in churches for hundreds of years, and our organ was built by a company right here in Massachusetts called the Fisk Organ Company in the 1970s. It was made in the style of instruments played about 300 years ago when a famous organist named Bach was alive. Let's take a look at the organ console, which is where I sit every Sunday and where I play the music, and all the sound then comes from the pipes that you see over here. So the first thing you probably notice is that there are keyboards like piano keyboards in front of me. Unlike a piano, I have two different keyboards up here, and if you look down below, I have a keyboard down at my feet as well, so that my feet can play as well as my hands. You might notice one other thing that's different about these keyboards. On a piano keyboard, most of the keys are white, and then there are a few keys up here that are black, and these are switched, they're the opposite. And that's because this is made in a style of instrument that was done during Bach's time over 300 years ago. And 300 years ago, it was very expensive to make the white keys and cheaper to make the black keys. So a lot of times the black keys were made out of wood and the white expensive keys were made out of ivory, so they made less of them and they put the white ones up here. You might also notice that there are a bunch of little knobs on either side of the keyboards, and those are called stops. They control different pipes that you see up here. So these stops are for different sounds, and the different sounds imitate different instruments. For example, I can pull out a stop, and all of a sudden it sounds like a flute. Or I can pull a different stop, and it might sound like a trumpet. There are also stops that imitate strings. You might think of a violin or a cello. And then there are stops that we only really think of when we think of the organ. It's kind of what we hear when we sing a hymn in church. They're the main sound of the organ, and so they're called principals. It's the principal sound that you hear, and they sound like this. Now, the amazing thing about an organ is that I can combine a lot of sounds together and play them all at once. If I add one more stop to that principal, it's called the principal chorus, and it's usually what we think of when we sing a hymn. It sounds like this. So all those sounds are made by different types of pipes, and the highest sounds are made by very little pipes, smaller than my pinky finger. They sound like this. It almost sounds like a whistle, doesn't it? The biggest pipes are much taller than I am. The tallest one is 16 feet tall, and it sounds like this. Now, if I start to put all these things together, I can make all kinds of music playable on this organ. We can gather all kinds of sounds, and when everybody out here is singing in the congregation, you can still hear the organ playing above everybody singing, and it helps support us as we sing. It's why organs have remained the primary instrument for singing in churches for hundreds of years. So now that we've had a chance to talk about the sounds you hear, let me play a piece. This is a hymn that we sing on Sundays. Sometimes it's in your hymnals. I think it's number 460. And I'm going to start with the softest sounds of the organ. And by the time I'm done with the hymn, you'll have heard every sound on the organ all added together, and it'll be as loud as it gets. Here we go. Remember I said that this organ was built like an organ over 300 years ago. And one of the things about an organ 300 years ago is they didn't have electricity. So in order to get the signal from where I press the keys to where the pipes speak, they had to make all these little connections. They're little wooden connections that go from this console and they go under the step over here, and then they go up into the organ case to where the pipes are. There's air running through this whole organ, which you see in front of me. And these are called stops because if I pull something out, it stops the air from running around and makes it go into a channel underneath the pipes that you see up here. And the blower and the bellow that the air goes into is electric now, but in Bach's time, they would have paid kids in the congregation to come and pump the bellows so that the organist could play and so that people could sing. Here I am at the blower. There's an electric blower down here that provides air that goes all through the organ. If you remember when I was talking out front, I told you that Bach used to pay kids in his congregation to come and pump the bellows. They would have looked something like this, and they would have had big levers on them that they would have to pull down, or sometimes they stepped on them to make the air go through the organ. It was a big workout. So there's one last thing that I haven't talked about, and that's a pedal that you see right here. And if you look up there, there's wooden louvers that open and close. And it's called a swell box because the sound can swell, it can grow if I open them up, and then it gets soft if I close it. So I'd like to play one last piece for you. It will use that swell box. You'll see it close, and it'll get soft, and then it gradually opens when I get towards the end of the piece, and we have a big, exciting ending.